All right, welcome to the SAVI Coaching Podcast. This is the Hours. I am Tyler. I'm joined by my friend Claire, who has not been on the Hours for a few months, but I'm very pleased to have you back sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be back. I'm pumped.
What
I've been listening in.
I know. So, for those of you that don't know, Claire started Savvy Coaching with me nearly 3 years ago now, and helped create many of the resources that we have in our classroom, and takes care of all of the onboarding and behind the scenes stuff. But is an amazing coach in her own right, an ex college player, university coach, has traveled the country running camps for years and years and years. And so I'm delighted that people get to benefit from your experiences and your wisdom. And let's dive in right away to the big question. And the big question is for you. And it's one that we often get asked. What, Claire, would you say is the difference between sloppy and messy?
Sloppy and messy. The immediate thing that comes to mind is just care. Like sloppy, I think lack of care. Messy, I think organized chaos. Like there is some purpose to a mess, and there can be organization within that. Whereas there's not really an intent with slop. Like a messy bun is a very stylish hair thing, but stains on your t-shirt is kind of gross. Like you just didn't know they were there and you don't care about it. Similarly, like my room can get messy, but I know where everything is. Like I've put it there and I have a plan to attack it. Whereas like if there was just garbage on my floor, it's kind of sloppy. So there's purpose, and I think mess can be used to move in a direction. It has energy associated with it. Like when I think of mess, I think of energy and going towards something, or like something is happening there. Whereas sloppiness, it's like lack of energy, lethargy, and just like a pause in that.
I really like the room analogy. That is excellent. And let me give a basketball example of what you just articulated, which is wonderful. Last night's practice was messy in that we had our players in groups of three during our pre-practice that we were working on finishing in chaos and awareness. We had four groups of three at the same basket with one ball. They would go step from different areas on the floor and attack the rim. There might be four players with four different basketballs attacking the rim in a small space at the same time. That was messy. Now, what made it not sloppy was we had equip them with the objective of, if you're the only person in the smile, go quick off one foot and finish before any other balls can knock your ball off. If there's someone else in the smile, play off 2 feet for balance and control and timing to avoid that body and that ball. If there's another ball on the rim when you want to shoot, don't. Fake until that ball leaves the rim and you have an open window to shoot. So while balls were bouncing everywhere, there were lots of players in small space and it looked messy. It wasn't sloppy because there was an intent to it. And I think that that is the basketball extension of what you talked about with your room, and the hairstyle. So excellent stuff.
Excellent. If I can add one thing to that,
Yes.
it would be the improvement piece. Like the mess a lot of the time happens when you first do something, so a drill the first time you do it, but theoretically it gets better over time. Whereas if there's that lack of care, like sloppiness can actually get worse over time. And
Mhm.
it's something that I think coaches need to look out for, because they may try and avoid the mess, but that's not usually the issue. A lot of the time it's the fact they kind of get familiar with something, where it's like the same warm up they've done forever, and then their players do it in a sloppy way because they lose that care and intent and energy that like the mess may have had.
Yeah, a great clarifying point. And Claire and I actually discussed before this podcast about not piggybacking too much on points, but this point is so good, I'm going to piggyback anyway. So I'm going to break my own. Hopefully, this is improving. Um, Claire just articulated the goal. which is improvement. And this might seem redundant, but it needs to be said because too often coaches have an unconscious goal of order. The goal is not order, the goal is improvement. I helped out with a camp, didn't run the camp. I helped out with a camp where the goal was order. There were lines, players were on lines, and they didn't get very many reps because of the orderliness of the repetition. So there was one coach with 15 kids at a basket, and they really wanted order. So one player went at a time while 14 players watched, and it was orderly, but it didn't necessarily lead to improvement because most players weren't participating in any way. So order is not the outcome, improvement is, and that tends to go through a stage of messiness.
I like that. I like that. I know that you've been improving at pickleball, and my small question to build off our big one is how has learning pickleball, improving at pickleball, improved your basketball coaching?
That is a wonderful question, and thank you for acknowledging my improvement. It has been messy. Um, I'll give you three ways. One, patience. As a as an expert in basketball, I often can become impatient with how long it takes players to grasp things that to me seem simple or easy. But since I'm learning a new skill, like my coach will tell me to do something and I know what they want me to do, I just can't do it. And it takes me a long time to do it. And so it's improved my patience as a basketball coach in empathizing with beginners. Second thing, it has improved my articulation of exactly what the outcome is. So too often as a coach, I think I tell them what their next step is, and instead, what I've learned is I don't need to give them the next step. I need to give them the destination and allow them to discover and create their own solutions to get it done. An example of this would be, let me go basketball because this is a coaching podcast. This is not just a basketball podcast. This is a coaching podcast. So I'll go ahead and give a pickleball example, right? So oftentimes in pickleball, once all four players arrive at the kitchen, the next step is you want to dink the ball low and to make an unattackable ball for the opponent, low over the net in the kitchen so the opponent can't attack it. That would be the next step. But the outcome you actually want is you want to actually create an advantage where your opponent might get off balance and pop up a ball. So if you say, okay, next step, dink the ball, well, you could dink the ball forever, but not actually achieve the outcome that you want, which is to gain an advantage. Whereas if you say gain an advantage, now all of a sudden there is creativity and you can react in the moment. Same thing happens in basketball. And I'm coaching my coaches into this here at the local academy all the time because they speak in, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, colloquialisms, cliches, coach speak. How do you say that word?
Colloquialism? Yeah.
Colloquial. Oh, man.
Cliches. Coach speak.
Coach speak, thank
Synonym.
you. So one of the most common ones is this: set it up, slow down, run the offense, right? And every time any coach says that, I kind of cringe a little bit. When our coaches say that, my heart breaks a little inside. But they still do because that's not the goal. The goal isn't to run an action or run the offense. The goal is to create advantage and attack advantage. And so instead of saying, oh, the next step to create that advantage is to do this thing, instead we want to zoom out a little bit and say, okay, here's the objective. All right, there's a small question. That was only the second answer. Here is here's the third thing that I've learned from pickleball. All coaches make the same mistakes. So in the pickleball world, there are many coaches giving lessons, and I'm in that space now as I'm a co-founder of an online educational platform in pickleball. And as I'm in that world and I see all these coaches getting paid 75 to $150 an hour to do lessons, and I walk by and watch these lessons, every lesson looks the same. The player receiving the lesson is isolating a single shot over and over and over again, being fed a ball by their coach. and being coached into the technique of a single shot. And I have learned that the most common mistake in coaching pickleball is the most common mistake in coaching basketball as well, which is too much block training in isolation without game context, without game reads. There's a difference between teaching someone a shot and teaching someone how to play the game. Most coaches, skills trainers in basketball, and unfortunately in pickleball, they teach players how to execute a single shot that doesn't necessarily ever occur in a real game without all of the additional factors of movement, opponent, time, space, score, whatever. And so it is reaffirmed for me the importance of going back to the big question, embracing the messiness of the actual game and improving and bringing intent to that messiness as opposed to looking to achieve order.
Wow,
Great
that's
question.
learning. Yeah,
Well, that was a small question, but a too large answer. I received that.
I support anything in groups of threes, so it's fine.
Usually, my wife makes fun of me about this. She's like, whenever she asks me a question, I say, "Well, three things," and she's like, "You don't even have three things. That's just your default, and you're gonna make up three things because you're so committed to this group of three." And I
Exactly.
say, "Well, there's three reasons why you're wrong." No, but yeah, it's pretty. It is definitely a default now. Let's go to mailbag. Mailbag time. We're transitioning to mailbag. We got a whole bunch of questions. If you're listening to this podcast and you are not currently in our free coaching community, what are you doing? I do believe it is the best community for coaches on the internet, and it's completely free. We have more questions in there than we can answer, but I must celebrate our coaches, especially our three coaches that are at the top of the leaderboard: Frank Fogg, Kevin Krieger, Isaac Castro. You are celebrated because you are offering a ton of value and answering other coaches' questions in there. Big snaps. Patrick, close fourth. I've got to celebrate you as well. But you can go in there and get ideas from other coaches as well as our experts. Myself, Claire, Mark, we're all in there as well. All right, Claire, go ahead and take the first mailbag question that you want to hit.
Oh, I'm excited. All right, my first one. I was so excited to see this because rebounding is my game. I'm 5'5", but that I would say helped me get a college scholarship. So Matt Reel asked, "I'm curious for ideas on how coaches focus on rebounding, drills, emphasis, box out techniques. What do you focus on? I'm also interested in any suggestions on how to rebound out of a 2-3 zone because they've played man in the past." I have three things.
Do you actually?
I really do. I really
Okay.
do. I squeezed them in. But immediately when I saw this is like technique and emphasis. That kind of goes together for me. If you emphasize rebounding, you can work the technique into whatever you're emphasizing. The first way to do that is just shoot. I know most of our SAVI coaches are shooting. So if you're not shooting, shoot, but then shift your emphasis in whatever shooting drill you're doing, whether that's individual, partners, group, doesn't really matter. You can use this with anything, but just teach tracking. So if you're going to teach a technique, I would say the most helpful is not exactly how you hit a player or when to go where. It's, are your players tracking the ball? So if you can measure what you want to emphasize and start tracking, like the shooter can count their makes, but if the rebounder is counting points for ball not hitting the floor and you have a rebounding leaderboard attached to that, you're measuring it, you're emphasizing it, and they're going to get better at their tracking by tracking the ball on the shot to hopefully not lead to a bounce or limit bounces afterwards. So that is my emphasis technique suggestion. The second piece would be just the mindset that you have going into it, which then I think this helps with transfer as well. Like, not just we did a rebounding drill and now they're still not doing it in a game, is something actually that Mark mentioned, I think last week, maybe the past 2 weeks in a row, is extending the drill. So if you can frame defensive rebounding as really the first step in your offense, some players will be more likely to do that. How do you do that in a drill? Is extend the shot into rebound or play into rebound. Do not end the drill or the rep at that point, but extend it into offense. So many players will get the rebound and then lose it because they're not holding on to it, or they think the drill or rep is finished. But if you can say, okay, now you have to respace to get the outlet, now you have to get in your protection plan and get into joker, like whatever your next step is, that's going to finish the play, start their offense, and make them more excited to do it. So that, yeah, technique, emphasis leading into the mindset and transfer, I think is really big. And then third and final would be just your approach to it. Is I love rebounding roles. Like I love that that's part of our systems and the SAVI systems. But whatever you choose to do, whether you tell people they have to box out, whether you tell people we're just going to run after the ball, or you're more of like Mark's approach of just checking, is your player chasing or not? Embrace natural strengths like that, and just giving a player a role, or telling them to do what they already naturally do, you're going to get more of it. And so if somebody loves hitting people, empower them to hit people. If somebody loves chasing the ball down like I did, let them do that, and you're going to have more success.
One additional thing that I think I would add to rebounding. If you want to be a better rebounding team, give your better rebounders more playing time as well. And I think that just agrees with what you said, Claire, about embrace their natural strengths. I mean, so often coaches want to become a better rebounding team by getting their bad rebounders to become better rebounders. And that's going to happen a little bit, but not very much. Like really, if you do have better rebounders, but they're probably not as good at other things. So if you're going to prioritize rebounding, then it should just make its way into your playing time. Okay, I am going to take this one, and I think this one might be controversial. So Latrice asked, and Latrice, hello. I know we were messaging on the app with some questions about the Olympiad for tryouts, and that will be coming. Latrice asked this: my assistant coaches are working to build out a small library of quick hitters and baseline out of bounds. We would like to add them to a portal, so it would be accessible to coaches and players. Any suggestions where we could start with this? I've saved a few things that I like, but we're trying to figure out how to get them all in one place. Right now, they're saved on Instagram, but where can we save them? So, a lot of our coaches have gone in there and given some suggestions for platforms. I'm going to leave that alone. But what I will share is this: I'll share a word of warning. I would caution coaches from investing too much time and energy on providing a playbook to their players. Um, I think there are better things that players could do in their homework time than study your plays. Instead, I would only implement an amount of quick hitters or baseline out of bounds that your players can execute and remember just by physically doing them in the midst of your games. If you're spending a lot of time in practice on these things, or if you're spending a lot of time outside of practice in order for them to like memorize these things, I think that you're probably going to get limited traction and return on investment of that time. You'll get much greater return on investment if their time at home was actually spent on film study of the player you want them to play like. So, for example, we're doing player evaluations for the players in our academy right now. And one thing that we're including in this player evaluation is this is your player prototype. You should learn to play more like this player. We've got a long athletic player that's just a great offensive rebounder. Can't shoot really outside the 3-point line yet, but they're also just like really, really fast. And so we're saying, okay, your player prototype is Asia Wilson. Like you need to study Asia Wilson and do what she does. I would rather that player watch 30 minutes of Asia Wilson than 30 minutes of baseline out of bounds plays. I think it will have a greater impact on their development and our team's success. So I'm not saying don't put this thing together. I am saying you're probably not going to get a lot of impact from your players studying your quick hitters on some online portal. So that's my word of caution. Anything to add to that one, Claire?
I love a player led moment. So if you want them to remember a play, see if they can draw one up. Like they'll have fun with it. they will start thinking about exactly what you said, like, oh, if this person should get the ball, well, how do we get them open? So I'd say, yeah, empower your players to see if they can draw something up, which they'll be more likely to take ownership of, remember, and advocate for. We got to talk
Yeah.
about defense.
Yes.
Always got to talk about defense. And I think a lot of our coaches, as they've been going through the preseason blueprint, last month's cohort, they were focused on offense. I think that's a natural place for a lot of coaches to start. Of what are we running? How are we going to score? And now they're thinking, okay, now we're in the gym. We got some principle play down. What do we do? So Marquette asked, we talk a lot of offense, but as preseason workouts begin for us here, what is a good first week of a defensive install? What does that look like? I think it's very similar to offense. Is my answer is share the principle, then let them try. So if you don't have the principle yet, or you don't have your vision defensively, first get that down so that you have something simple that your players know is the foundation and the goal, your objective for the defense. So if that's getting people to jail, share that, then see what they do. I think that would be my first suggestion is how are they problem solving? If they know the objective and you're rewarding that, then they'll figure something out. That allows you to provide feedback and start layering in the system, whatever that system is for you. Lock left, we have the layers prescribed in the course. So you can kind of follow that step by step of locking them in jail, hunting the pass, building the wall. That was definitely my experience in college. Coaching college was cool. We're locking left. We weren't a transition lock left team, but at least it's like, all right, we're getting it to this corner. What do you do on the ball? What do you do one pass away? What do you do on the wall, two passes away? So share the principle, let them try, then provide feedback from that in terms of specific positions. So that would be kind of my first day, first week. In terms of how you do that, if you're looking for specific drills or games, do what you were already doing. Especially if you're teaching something new, layer it into a formation, a drill, a game that they're already familiar with so that they're not focusing on organization, rotations, a new structure, but the coaching and the reward that they're getting out of it, like your measurement and your feedback, is all focused on defense. So same thing, adjust your scoring and feedback to that.
Love it. Example of this in 30 seconds attack training is a prime game or a prime drill that we do often. Last night, we wanted to get better at our ball screen coverage. And so we just incorporated ball screen defense into our attack training. It wasn't a new drill. We just changed our focus and worked on being able to get over top of ball screens. You don't need a new drill, you don't need a new game, you just need a new focus in order to improve a different aspect of the game. Speaking of games, Claire, how about you dive into the game of the week?
I'm excited about this, not just because of the name, but because I've used it at all levels. Youth, high school, college has been very effective, and like we said, can be adjusted to emphasize different things. So this is in our drill book. It is called 4v4 Canada Rules. I'll share my screen for those who are watching on YouTube. And for those of you listening to the podcast, it is pretty self explanatory. I think you'll be able to follow along, or you can sign up for the membership with our Grow. You can get access to this and really dive into the video. So, this is where it is in our classroom, in school, in our drill book 4v4 Canada rules. So this game really splits the court into 6 segments. So it's a half court. You can expand it into the full court, absolutely. But your half court is going to be divided into 6 blocks, which really give you low wing, high wing, center, key, the main spaces that you're going to use. But with 4 people on offense and on defense, 2 of those are left empty if you're not good at math. 6 minus 2, 4, 4v4. And the only rule is that 2 offensive players cannot be in the same segment at the same time. So I know a lot of coaches will be like, but what about ball screens? It's okay. You can work on that another time. There's lots of different things you can do for that. But 4v4 Canada rules is just a fantastic way to work on your spacing, first of all. Like that would be the first level. if your team gets really clumped together, use this to space them out. If it's just that, you've done something right. After that, you can also emphasize different things of where it's like, okay, we're working on our burn cuts. Who is going? Like, am I going to be assertive and get to the basket? Or am I waiting and looking at my teammates to see who's going? And then, like you said, there's no wrong person to cut. If you both end up there, you learn something from it and somebody has to leave. Or you're called on a violation. So there's that pain point to learn for the next rep. And then once somebody gets into that very high value space by the basket, it then encourages exit cuts as well and people to kind of shift as a group. Because if somebody cuts to the basket, they need the other two players in the corners to lift for them to properly exit. And you cannot stay there if you want to create an advantage for somebody to be able to hunt. So, a lot of pieces that can go into that. And it's really pick your poison. What do you need to work on and use it to your advantage there?
I love this, and I hardly ever use it for some reason. So I think I just need you to come and run it so I can watch it one time. And like most coaches, I'm reluctant to use tools I'm unfamiliar with, and tend to use tools I'm most confident in. So actually, I'm not going to wait for you. I'm committed to experimenting, like I would with my pickleball game. But excellent breakdown. Let's transition into our Teach Better segment. And in our Teach Better segment, we attempt to equip coaches with tools to become master teachers, better communicators, and to help players transform faster and better. So, the tool this week is powerful pauses. Yes, exactly like that. So, three scenarios, rule of three hitting again, three scenarios and ways to use powerful pauses to become a more effective teacher. The first way is when players aren't focused or are talking when you're waiting to teach. Instead of trying to yell over top of them or compete with them for the leadership of the room, just pause. Pause and wait until players are looking around and actually become uncomfortable. Recognize the moment themselves and then start to shush their teammates or get focused or get locked in. You can do this when, transitioning between drills or games and players are shooting around or slow to come back from getting water. Instead of gathering them every single time, just stand at center court or underneath the basket and wait. The first time it might be 4 to 5 minutes, but then they might be like, oh, it seems like coach is ready, and they'll start to migrate towards you and players will begin to lead. So that's the first way to use powerful pauses, is to gain attention as opposed to telling or yelling. The second time to use a powerful pause is to get them to speak. So, when the first time that you normalize asking questions like, what did we get better at there? Chances are very few players will speak, if any. Or maybe you have one player that always talks, right? And then you can use a pause and say, I'll wait until we have five players with their hand up because they have something to say. Powerful pause. Now, that moment where every player is then accessing in their own mind, what did I learn? That's the value of the pause. The value isn't in what players actually say. The value is in them accessing their experience. And that's when learning takes place. But if you don't create space or time for that with a powerful pause, then only the quickest thinkers are the ones that have already reviewed it. They're the only ones that benefit from the question. So that'd be the second time to utilize a powerful pause. The last time to utilize powerful pauses is just in your teaching as a communicator. If I just keep talking like this and don't leave any space for punctuation or anything like that, everything that I said has the same level of emphasis and value. But if I do something like this, we have to rebound. If I pause for an uncomfortable or a powerful amount of time before I say something, the next thing I say has more value. And so, yeah, as a coach, we need to implement the pause in order to prioritize the things that are most important to us. So I would challenge you as a coach, implement those powerful pauses in your teaching and in your practices. And I think you'll see some benefits. Claire, as we get out of here, what is one thing that you would like to share or remind or ask coaches to consider as they go about their next week?
I'll carry on from the powerful pause and double down on that. I think that is the most impactful piece of coaching that you have given me. And I know I've told you this before, and some other coaches this before, that it was when we almost first met, 6, 7 years ago. And you had said, great teaching, you can huppy, which is a PGC term. But instead of hurry, you huppy, and there's 4 P's, which is power, purpose, patience, and poise.
We might
And
have to add pause now. I don't know. There might need to be 5 P's.
right,
Okay.
pause. But I've used that in everything. So coaches, double down on the powerful pause. Use that to be powerful, to be purposeful, to be patient, to have poise, and apply that beyond basketball.
Beautiful. That's a great way to send us out today. Claire, it was a pleasure having you back on. We can't allow it to go months and months again before you're back on. So appreciate you sharing with coaches. I'm Tyler. That's Claire. We're Savvy Coaching. And until next time, stay savvy.